Me now to react to the hysteria and much, much more. More important issues. The White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller. I honestly, maybe I'm guilty, Stephen. This wasn't a story. I mean, I think it's incredible. The ballroom is needed. It's going to be a great renovation. It didn't seem like a scandal worthy of coverage, but it has driven the news on the left.
The scandal is how Democrats and the left have scarred the landscape of our country with grotesque so-called modern art that celebrates ugliness, that celebrates defacement. The tragedy is a political party and a movement that has ripped down our statues, our monuments, our holidays, our heroes, our heritage. The Republican Party under President Trump celebrates beauty again and beautification again. And just as President Trump has beautified Washington, D.C., scraping off the graffiti that has been all over our nation's capital, been all over Union Station, our areas of transit and work and recreation, now he's repairing, finally, an area of the White House that has been left in disrepair for decades. The East Wing, which importantly is not part of the White House, it is not part of the residence. It was a cheaply built add-on structure in the mid-20th century, which houses offices, is not a residence, nobody lives there, is badly in need of refurbishment, repair, and renovation. The White House also desperately needs and has long needed a place to hold large events for Americans, for visitors, for visiting delegations, befitting the greatest nation in the world. As I'm sure you know and you've seen, your viewers have seen, in the past, when large events were held at the White House, they had to erect a makeshift tent in the mud at great expense, build it up, then tear it down over and over and over again. So every time Obama held a big event at the White House, what would he do? Build a tent, fill it up, tear it down. That's absurd. We're the United States of America. We have to be able to hold events at the People's House in the United States Capitol. And very importantly, President Trump is making sure it's in the neoclassical design around which our nation's architecture has long been directed, up until, again, recently, when we begin seeing these modern art structures, these brutalist structures, and these many other buildings that have been horrible and depressing to look at.
All right, Stephen, I'd love to ask you about something that I think is a little bit more pressing. It's an incredible answer, and it's a great explanation of not only why it's being done, but how it's being done there, the renovation at the White House. But I do think this is incredibly important for our audience, and that is the story over the Indian illegal alien truck driver who's been now charged with killing 3 in a DUI crash. California Governor Gavin Newsom has acknowledged that illegal alien had a California CDL, but he is pointing the finger away. He is pointing the finger at the feds. This is what he said to Fox. He said, "This is a tragic situation, and as every other tragedy of the last 10 months, Secretary Nome has ordered Secretary Duffy to look for every opportunity to manipulate the facts to score cheap political points. But the federal government needs to look within before they blame outside." The federal government approved and renewed this individual's federal employment authorization multiple times, which allowed him to obtain a CDL in accordance with federal law. Now, we should just state the facts here. That was under the Biden administration, Stephen. But is it the case that a federal work permit just requires him to rubber stamp a California CDL?
No. So, look, this is a Democrat-caused calamity, heartbreaking calamity. The first crime against Americans was the Biden administration's decision to voluntarily free and release from custody an illegal alien within hours of crossing the southern border. Again, let's go back to the unending nightmare that we lived through for 4 years under Biden, where single adult men in groups, in caravans, or traveling alone would show up at the border, present themselves, announce, "I am here illegally, I've invaded your country, I demand entry." And Biden would order the Border Patrol at taxpayer expense to ferry them on to the destination of their choice, in this case, California. That happened in 2022. The Biden administration did one other thing. Donald Trump issued a regulation barring work permits for illegal aliens. Biden reversed that regulation, mandated work permits for illegal aliens, issued him a work permit. And by the way, we're now being sued by every leftist group you can imagine trying to get us to keep giving work permits to illegal aliens because that's what leftists want. Then Gavin Newsom, in his state, has a policy to give commercial driver's licenses to individuals who do not know how to speak English and do not know how to drive. Those are policy choices that Governor Newsom and his state have made. So it's one Democrat policy choice after another.
Okay, now to the state of Illinois, Stephen. And Governor J.B. Pritzker has talked about interfering with arresting ICE agents in Illinois. Now, it appears the federal government has said if that happens, J.B. Pritzker could be arrested. Let's talk about your willingness and under what federal authority do you arrest a sitting governor? I understand the supremacy clause. I understand interference with a federal officer. Tell me how it works that he would make himself susceptible to being arrested.
Well, the answer I'm about to give doesn't only apply to Governor Pritzker. It applies to any state official, any local official, anybody who's operating in an official capacity who conspires or engages in activity that unlawfully impedes federal law enforcement conducting their duties. So if you engage in a criminal conspiracy to obstruct the enforcement of federal immigration laws or to unlawfully order your own police officers or your own officials to try to interfere with ICE officers or even to arrest ICE officers, you're engaged in criminal activity. Different kinds of crimes would apply. There's obstruction of justice. There is harboring illegal aliens. There is impeding the enforcement of our immigration laws. And then as you get up the scale of behavior, you obviously get into seditious conspiracy charges, depending on the conduct, and many other offenses. So again, it depends on the action, it depends on the conduct, it depends on what is taking place. But what we need to reassure, a couple points. To all ICE officers, you have federal immunity in the conduct of your duties. And anybody who lays a hand on you or tries to stop you or tries to obstruct you is committing a felony. You have immunity to perform your duties, and no one, no city official, no state official, no illegal alien, no leftist agitator or domestic insurrectionist can prevent you from fulfilling your legal obligations and duties. And the Department of Justice has made clear that if officials cross that line into obstruction, into criminal conspiracy against the United States or against ICE officers, then they will face justice.
All right, Stephen, before we go, I'd love just to ask you a somewhat personal question, and that is that you've been the target of a lot of hatred, of rhetorical attacks, and it has manifested in your life that you have now had to make some physical alterations. You've had to move. You've had people visit your home. What are you and your family doing? And of course, you're not going to tell us, and nor should you, where you now have moved, but what have you had to do in the current climate here in America?
Well, we live in an environment where large portions of the Democratic Party have become violently radicalized. You know, we have now daily incidences of vehicle ramming against ICE officers. We have constant nonstop doxing threats against public officials, against federal law enforcement. Nonstop death threats, nonstop violence against federal officers out in the street conducting their duties. Mobs form. Individuals begin striking at, throwing at, hurling rocks at ICE officers. We had a vehicle ramming attack outside a Coast Guard facility. So the Democrat Party, through years of indoctrination, as well as through importing radicals into the country, through migration policy, as well as through implanting in the judiciary, in our legal system, like-minded radicals, have created this incredibly dangerous moment for our republic. You know, in my own case, we obviously take all the precautions we can take in light of the death threats, in light of the domestic terrorism environment that we're dealing with. But my responsibility as a member of this administration is to protect the American people and the responsibility of everyone that I work with all throughout the government underneath President Trump, and to reassure the public that domestic terrorists are going to lose. We are going to crush them, and we're going to fulfill the mandate that the American people voted for in 2024 in making America safe, clean, and beautiful. And yes, we are going to enforce our national sovereignty, and those who trespassed into our country will be returned to their country of origin or any other country willing to take them, because that's what the law requires, and that's what having a nation requires.
And I know you will do so, but we wish you the best of luck as well, and prioritizing also not just the safety of your fellow Americans, but your family, Stephen. So thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.